Diane, Ted, Kathy, and Debbie. Let's give them a round of applause. You know who you are. Most of you are wearing aprons right now, so thank you for that. Thank you, sir. Just in case we need some extra batteries. We're going to begin our program tonight with a sung prayer, because I'm not going to sing as much today because I want to share with you the music as it's heard in the places where it comes from. But I'm going to begin by singing something that comes from this whole tradition we're going to be talking about tonight. And I have my wonderful Irish assistant back there. Much, will you take us to the next slide, please? Which is our fourth meditation, Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, Pilgrims in This Barren Land, the sacred blues of Ireland, Scotland, and Appalachia. And this tune comes from all of the traditions we're going to talk about tonight, but specifically from where I come from in southeastern Kentucky, from the Old Regular Baptist tradition, which we're going to start about first. And it's a tune called In Seasons of Grief. And I'm going to sing it to you from the hymnal used by the Old Regular Baptist in eastern Kentucky and southwest Virginia and southern West Virginia, called the Thomas Hymnal. And it's a hymnal that has no music, just words in it. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But I'll open with this prayer. In seasons of grief, to my God I'll repair. When my heart is overwhelmed with sorrow and care, from the ends of the earth unto thee I will cry. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, higher than I, higher than I. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. When Satan the tempter comes in with a flood to drive my poor soul from the fountain of good, I will pray to the Savior who kindly did die. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, higher than I, higher than I. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And when I have ended my pilgrimage here, clad in Jesus' pure righteousness, let me appear. In the swellings of Jordan, to thee I'll rely, and look to the rock that is higher than I, higher than I, higher than I. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Thank you. As we've talked about for the last 3 weeks, we've covered some geography from the Mississippi Delta to the mountains of the southern United States. We're going to stick in the mountains of the southern United States for just a little bit longer, and then right at the end we're going to cross over to Ireland, to where I think a lot of these sounds that we're hearing come from in a certain tradition. But that piece comes to you from the Old Regular Baptist tradition. And I have a few photos. I decided to stay away from trying to put words up. Well, I've got some at the end. But this tradition of the Old Regular Baptist is a part of the Christian denomination of the Baptist Church, which is all over the place. There are loads of Baptists out there, all kinds of varieties of Baptist churches. Many of you have run into them before. The American Baptist, the Southern Baptist, of course, the Cooperative Baptist. There are varieties of African American Baptist churches. The Old Regular Baptists are somewhat connected to the Primitive Baptist Church. Some of you know the Primitive Baptist. I was driving up in the north part of Madison County yesterday toward Hazel Green, and I ran through some Primitive Baptist churches, which reminded me I'm still in the South and that these churches are there. The Old Regulars are a variety of Primitive Baptists, though they'd say they came before the Primitive Baptist, of course. They're more primitive than the Primitive Baptists. And they're part of a bit of Baptists that really only exist in the central Appalachian Mountains. Audrey, take us on to the next slide, please. I got to study under Howard Dorgan, who wrote one of the best books on the Old Regular tradition, called The Old Regular Baptists of Central Appalachia, Brothers and Sisters in Hope. And keep going on, because I'm just bouncing around here. And the Old Regulars have a variety of differences from other Baptist traditions. One, they don't have music in their church. They only sing. And the style that they sing is a style called lined-out hymnody. And this lined-out hymnody really only still exists. It existed prior to the 20th century in a lot of places. But today it really only still exists in about 3 different churches. One is in the African American tradition in the South. The other is in the central Appalachian region with the Old Regulars. And the next one is where I think their music originates from. I've got to get my songs ready to play here. Sorry about that. In a few seconds, I'm ready to play some for you. But in addition to that, the Old Regulars, well, it's hard to tell you all about the Old Regulars. Why don't I stop trying to explain Old Regulars and play the music for you? But again, their style comes from a time when people were traveling into the mountains, finding places, building up churches, and their music style is very much off the core, right off the base of where their lives were lived and where their music was coming from in the faiths and religions that they had. And I want to play you an example of their lined-out hymnody. This picture I have here is an image of one of the Smithsonian Folkways recordings of this music, and that's where most of this I'm playing to you comes from. I had experiences with the Old Regulars because my 2 older daughters' grandfather, their great-grandfather, was a member of the New Bethel Association of the Old Regular Baptist Church in Jenkins, Kentucky. And every time I'd go to visit him, I'd always go worship with him, which he was thrilled because nobody else would. And I was happy to go visit with him. And I was almost thinking I was ready. And I learned to sing this hymnody with them. But let me give you an example. This is a hymn that we have in our hymnal. I can't remember the number. Maybe the choir members will remember. But it's a hymn, God Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, which we sang not too long ago. And, of course, their version is quite different from ours. Their version comes out of these old Thomas hymnals where they only have the words, because these hymnals would have been helpful. And the lined-out style of singing is to give the verse to the people and let the people sing it back to them. That's not all that exciting and interesting. The interesting part is the melodies that go with these hymns, because I've never been to an old regular Baptist church where they taught people the melody. They just know them. And when they sing them, they all come out the right way together. And let me see if I can give you a recording of Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, from the Thornton Old Regular Baptist Church, which is in Letcher County as well, close to where Jenkins is. So that's an example of the lined out hymnody of the Old Regular Baptist. You can hear what the purpose of it is, which is to call out the verses by someone who leads the hymns, and it allows the people to sing it back to them. Why am I playing it for you during a class on the blues during Lent? Because what we talked about last week that I think permeates the Appalachian song tradition is that high lonesome sound. And we were singing secular songs. I sang you a ballad, I sang you a couple banjo tunes. Within those tunes, all that high lonesome sound is present. But not just in the secular music is it present. It's present in that sound of the hymns of the churches that were sung. And the music that comes out of that is a sound of longing, of struggle. I mean, to me, the music and the melodies, regardless of what the words are saying, carry with them the sound of the region in a lot of ways. Another hymn that they sing quite differently from the way we sing it is, of course, the hymn Amazing Grace. And I thought I would attempt, since I don't have much to sing today, to sing you so you can hear that melody a little more clearly than you do in the recordings that you've heard. So unlike our version of Amazing Grace, which I won't sing, because if I sing it once, I'll not be able to unsing it. It's like Yellow Submarine from the Beatles. If you hear it once, it won't leave your brain. But the Old Regulars have a different variety and a different melody. But again, how they learn these melodies is hard to describe. They grow up with them. Singers and members of their congregations learned them as they were growing up. And in that tradition of audible learning from ear by ear, they have passed it along. So the Old Regulars' melody for Amazing Grace goes something like this. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was blind, but now I see. So, a very different melody from what you're used to hearing in our version of Amazing Grace. Still based on the same hymn. I'm always excited in the Episcopal Church because we include an extra verse than what you normally hear if you hear recordings of it. Is it the Lord's promise good to me? I can't remember. Anyway, there's actually, believe it or not, if you look up Amazing Grace in one of the Old Regulars hymnals, which I don't have the page marked or I'd read it to you, but there's at least 6 or 7 verses. So of the 4 that generally we all know by heart, there are actually extra ones that would have been written and sung in other churches, and that's one of them. I have a map up to give you just a sense of really where the Old Regular churches exist today. They don't exist really outside of eastern Kentucky or that far extended part of southwest Virginia or southern West Virginia. The Old Regulars tend to be in an association. So they got accused by mainline churches when mainline churches came into the region of only having church once or twice a month. If you go, you'll see on their signs that the Old Regulars will meet at one church every second Sunday. But that's because the other 4 Sundays, they'll drive across the mountain and worship in another association church. And then the next one, they'll go and worship at another association church. And their style of worship is all based on preaching. I think I mentioned to some of you the idea of singing down the preacher. Well, that's what happens. If the preacher's been preaching for too long and he's lost the spirit, they'll begin, Amazing Grace, and the preacher's still preaching, and he'll hear the music and the congregation will start singing, and they have a liturgy. None of them believe they have a liturgy, but they do. If they hear the song being sung, the preacher immediately will go down and start shaking everybody's hands, and by the time he's made it around the church shaking hands, the hymn has come to its conclusion, and he sits down and the next preacher gets up. But there's usually 3 preachers. They start around 9 o'clock and go till at least 1 o'clock. And when I would go with my daughter's grandfather, he always had, I loved it, he always had 2 plastic spoons in his pocket right here. sporks usually, and that's because they would be cooking while the end of the service was going on, and there was always a big dinner. So it was a very communal association of churches. They all got together, they knew each other. They were very traditional, so that meant that they separated. They had 3 ways of sitting. The men would sit on one side behind the altar, though if they were members of the church, because these all came from Presbyterian, so there's a bit of Calvinism left in them. They didn't expect you, they didn't give an altar call. God would tell you when you were chosen, and that's sometimes you wouldn't get baptized till you were a lot older, because they would wait for you to finally feel like you were really chosen by God. The women would sit, that were members, would sit on the other side of the altar behind the church, and all the visitors would sit in front. Audrey, I can't remember, will you go forward? This is a good, I think that's the Blackie Church in Letcher County, Kentucky, and I've been to that one before. It's an old regular church, nothing fancy. They're very simple in the way they set up things. Audrey, move on for me. Yeah, this is what I want you to see. This looks very much like an old regular altar, in which, interestingly enough, I always think about this on All Saints' Day. The old regulars, when members of their church die, they hang their pictures up behind the altar. So rather than seeing big crosses and candles, you see pictures of the members of the church that are behind the altar. And one church, I think the Thornton Church in Letcher County, had so many members, they built their own space so they could put pictures up of their past members in a different area of the church, almost like a baptistry from the old Catholic Church times. But they follow this tradition of lined out hymnody. And I want you to hear one more bit of old regular lined out hymnody, and then we're going to bounce across to where it comes from, which always gives me chills when I hear it, because it's amazing to think that after all this time, which the U.S. isn't that old a country, right? You could still find where something came from. This is a little bit of the old regular hymn called "I Am a Poor Pilgrim of Sorrow." That to me is the best Lenten hymn title of all time. I am a poor pilgrim of sorrow. I'm trying to make heaven my home. So have a listen to a little bit of this, and then I'm going to play you something amazing from the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. Cut it out there. A little bit of "I Am a Poor Pilgrim of Sorrow," again from one of these little churches in the mountains of eastern Kentucky. This is a recording from just back, I think, maybe 10, 15 years ago in Scotland. I just want you to hold on to that melody you just heard and listen to this one. the similarities. That's the only other place that we know of in the world where you can still hear lined out hymnody, and it's so amazingly similar. It shocks me when I hear it. That is from the Outer Hebrides, up in the top there. It looks yellow on my screen, but it's green on your old screen. Way up in the top is the Isle of Lewis. And in the Isle of Lewis, Audrey, will you go on one more because I've got a greater picture so you can see and remember where Scotland, what it looks like. Country of Scotland, all the way up there at the top. Ooh, I forgot I got this fancy thing that's got a little, I know this thing just drives, but it's got a little laser, right? So there is the Isle of Lewis, and right in the top of the Isle of Lewis is the back freeform church. It's part of the, Audrey, keep going. It's part of the church of, well, there's a nice picture of the Isle of Lewis. Go on one more for me. That's the back freeform, it's called BAC, B-A-C-K, freeform church. It's part of the Church of Scotland, which of course you should know, maybe you don't. I don't know if you should know or not. But it's not not like the Church of England, which is Anglican. Church of Scotland is Presbyterian, right? It's the Episcopal Church of Scotland that is Anglican. But these are one of the last groups. Oh, and by the way, did you understand the words? It's because they're singing in Scottish Gaelic. So not only is the melody and the style exactly, I mean, so incredibly similar to what I heard in old regular Baptist churches in Eastern Kentucky, they're singing in the old Scottish language. So Audrey, keep going for me. One more, please. So this is an image of the inside of that church. It's a lot different from the old regular Baptist churches, which are much more simpler. But it is in that style of the pulpit. I want to get a pulpit at St. Thomas like that. Real up high. Jeannie, don't you want one of those? We could go way up and preach from up there. I'd really want to swing a Bible around if I had one of those. But down on the bottom level is where the singer leads that. And the other interesting thing is, even though the people who crossed over into the United States remembered the melodies, remembered the style of lined out hymnody, in the Outer Hebrides, they're singing psalms. That was what you heard, was a portion of Psalm 16 being sung in Scottish Gaelic and being lined out in that same format. And to me, it matches well, again, this geography of the people who sing this music that carries with it this connected lonesomeness, this longing. I wouldn't call it lonesome as much as I would call it longing. But the sound is there, and it tends to come out of these areas that are rough and tough. I mean, I'd go to the Isle of Lewis on vacation now, but I guarantee you the people who built the back freeform church were probably those Scottish folks who are trying to get as far away from the English who were running the country at the time as they could, or missed the boat to go over to the Ulster area of Ireland, and because King Henry VIII wanted to get them out of Scotland and send them to some other place. And the struggle and the sound of that music carries with it the people who are traveling. I love that, the hymn, I think it's hymn 133, about By the Rivers of Babylon, where we sat down. I always sing the reggae version of it. And there we wept, remembering Zion. How can we sing the songs of Zion in a strange land? So to me, the music travels with the people, but it always carries this sadness of being distant from where they originated from. And in a lot of ways, I think that gets translated in a very Lenten theme to the longing to be in the presence of God. I'm a poor pilgrim of sorrow. I'm trying to make heaven, I want to make heaven my home. I sang you that banjo tune. I'm a long way traveling here below. I'm a long way traveling away from my home, which is another longing to be in the presence of God. I mean, if you lived in a rough life, and you had a few choices. I mean, again, this translates well into the Delta, where they certainly didn't have any choices. I mean, the question is, being in the presence of God is your hope. So the brothers and sisters in hope is an image that comes out of these churches that grew up in these hard areas of geography. And they carry the sound in the music, but the hope is in the music as well. Audrey, go forward. I don't remember what I put on here next, but if you hit the button, I'll find it. Oh, that's the members of the back freeform Church of Scotland and the Isle of Lewis. I'm always excited to see Presbyterians wearing clergy collars. Makes me excited sometimes. Audrey, move on one more. I think, yeah, this is an image. I find this interesting too. again, this is the Thomas hymnal used by the Old Regular Baptist. It's a very similar setup to, I mean, who knows who the publisher was on this. Audrey, go to the next page and you'll see the inside cover, which is written in Scottish Gaelic, which Audrey was thrilled with because she could actually read a little bit of it, because the Irish and the Scottish is obviously similar in a lot of ways, and she was able to translate that. But that's a psalm. I don't know, and Audrey wasn't sure either, but I'm pretty sure that S-A-I-L-M is probably the Scottish Gaelic word for psalms, because this is a collection of the psalms that they sing and line out. Yeah, that sound is there.
That music sounds so much like a bagpipe.
Oh yeah, the droning sound is there as well.
The sound is it's like they're just singing the bagpipe song.
Yeah, well the sound is there,
Yeah.
and everywhere you go, you find that in the regions where these people move to.
Beautiful.
And you know, for me, it was part of being from the Appalachian part of the South. It was really connecting and figuring out where my roots were. I didn't really need to go get a DNA test. I just had to listen to the way the people in churches sang, and then listen to what you heard in the Isle of Lewis, and it was easy to pick out where they came from without any question about that. I want to get to, I'm always running out of time, but I wanted to get to one other bit of music that is from the South. We'll jump back across the ocean, then we'll jump back one more time. Audrey, move forward. And of course, many of you know this is the sound of shape note singing. I mean, shape note singing to me was not written to be bluesy music. It was written or was put together as a way to help teach people how to sing easier in churches, to bring more voices. It's what every choir director wants, is more of the congregation to sing. So it was this style of shape note singing to teach people in the South. But the sound of the music that comes out, again, comes out from the people. Audrey, don't go too far because I got more slides for you to hit. Oh, well, we're not there yet. So give me just 2 seconds. And most of you have heard shape note singing before. Audrey, move on to the next one there, please. And then one more. I wanted you to be able to, well, of course, you know the Sacred Harp. I thought this was the one I wanted you to go to. This is, of course, the books that will go around. There'll be the Sacred Harp, there'll be the Kentucky Songster, there'll be a variety. There's even a Sand Mountain variety of shape note singing right here in North Alabama. I don't know it well enough, so I'm not going to talk anything about it, because I don't really know shape note singing as much as I know what we talked about with the old regulars. But it's not what it's about, it's the sound that you hear. Audrey, go forward and let me see. We're going to listen to people in Ireland. It's in honor of my wife, not St. Patrick. But she's singing, they're singing this tune. The shape note tunes are a whole lot like the tunes you find in the Thomas hymnal. They're listed by the sound, by the name of the tune, not the song title. So it wouldn't be Amazing Grace, it would be New Britain, which is the tune that Amazing Grace is based on. And in this tune, which I know as Am I Born to Die, another good Lenten tune to listen to, it's entitled Idumea. And Audrey, move on one more. You're not going to get to see the words, you just have to listen to them. But I wanted you to hear a group of shape note singers singing Idumea at a gathering in Ireland, because shape note singing has gone around the world now. Originates in this part of the country and comes in to be sung all around the world. And this is the Second Ireland Sacred Harp Convention. And it's in Cork, well, that's where Audrey's from. And it looks like we might have had a technical blowout there. Maybe, possibly. Okay. Well, you see what you can do, and I'll play it for people to hear. This is not the Irish version of it. But it doesn't matter, because the way they sing it is the same. Oh, here it is. Good, good. The first thing they sing is the do, re, yeah, that one, that part. The scale, yes. To get the melody. So, Idea Mia, the words to that, they sang the first verse and the second verse from the Sacred Harp. And that is, and am I born to die, to lay this body down, and must my trembling spirit fly into a world unknown? And the last verse is, waked by the trumpet sound, I from my grave shall rise, and see the judge with glory crowned, and see the flaming skies. So within that sound, the Idea Mia tune fits perfectly with that longing that's contained within it. And to me, it fits the Sacred Harp singing. And it's not all that variety or that particular melody, but that loud singing voice is there. And where does the loud singing voice come from? Audrey, oh good, you're already back. Scooch on one more ahead. Because the area that I want to go back to is Ireland now. We've been to Scotland and we've been in the southern United States. But the idea of cuina, which is the way it's pronounced in the Irish version of Gaelic, which also translates as lamenting or mourning, or keening is the word that it's come from. And I didn't exactly look up to see where keening originates from. But the idea is very much so the practice of lamenting. And in fact, the Irish became well known during their funeral rites from as far back as we know, all the way up into the 19th and even into the 20th century, of hiring singers to keen or to lament when they would gather for their funerals. Audrey, go to the next one. There's a description from the 19th century about a keening woman being dressed in rough attire with rough hair around it, and she came to lament with the look of lamenting, not just dressed up nicely to sing, but to come in to mourn. And he describes hands in the air. Go to the next one, Audrey. This is another painting of a drowned child, which is sad enough to look at. But the keeners are there in the background, if you can see them. And the idea that they're keeners is because they're women who were the ones who keened, and that their hands are up in the air as a sign of mourning. And we don't have any recordings of keening because eventually the English decided it should be illegal and tried to get rid of it. But the idea, of course, existed in the far west of Ireland even longer than it did. And I wanted to give you just a couple of real quick sounds. The closest we have, I think it was Alan Lomax who went to the Aran Isles in the far west of Ireland and did a few recordings of what the older ladies there remembered the sound of keening to sound like. And I'm just going to play you one of these to listen to, and then I'm going to let you hear where the idea of keening, I think, came from amongst the Irish, which was actually from the stories in the Gospels. Let me give you this recording from Alan Lomax back in probably the 1940s of the Aran Isles. Recording of her remembrance. That's called Cuina of the Dead, lament for the dead. There's another recording of it, but I want to bounce ahead because I think lamenting, one of the only really recorded, remembered songs of Cuina is the Cuina na Trí Mora. I should have my wife who could speak Irish to come up here and say this. But I want you to hear a recording of this one to get a sense of, again, the remembrance of keening and its connection to the mourning of the Blessed Virgin Mary. This is where I think many scholars today think that the idea of keening first emerged. It may have came out of some ancient pagan idea as well, but as far as its connection with Christianity, it came from the images of the Blessed Virgin Mary mourning over the death of Jesus. And it leads to it becoming something that women did. And the song that you're going to hear is not sung by a woman. There are some versions of it But this is the one that's easy to find if you get online and try to listen to. If you look up Keening or you look up Queena, you'll eventually run across this one. And this is a male singer who does a wonderful job at it from Cork. So I'll let you hear a little bit of this. The instrument, a good question. It could be an organ. It could be, I don't think it's a pipe. You caught me off guard. I should have looked it up. It sounds like, any musicians in here want to pay a good guess on that? An accordion is a good toss about it, or a reed organ. It's probably an accordion. That would fit more with the Irish traditional music style. There's a bit of a piano in there and other singers there. But I love that this idea of keening connects all the way back to where we're about to head to, which is Holy Week and the Passion. I mean, this story of a mother mourning for her child. I don't know what's wrong with me tonight, so I apologize. But there's such deepness to it. And that sound that comes out of that, the sound of women keening and mourning, becomes part of what religious music is picked up by. I mean, the Irish Catholics will include this in their form. We hear it when it crosses over into England and in Scotland. They find the same connections. And then it crosses the water into the Central Appalachian Mountains for those people that are walking and struggling and trying to follow God and remembering the sense of suffering that comes with that, but also the great hope that's contained within it. Because the words, we've got the Irish on one side and the English on the other, and you can read it yourself. It reminds me of what we walk through when we do the Stations of the Cross, the moments in which Jesus encounters her son at the moment of his death. The image, which I have right after this, Audrey, if you'll go forward, this incredible image, which is Michelangelo's Pietà, which is the look of the mournful mother receiving the body of her son. It captures the pain and suffering, but it also captures our faith and our hope. So to me, the music that's contained, it just carries that heart and soul that will also cross over into the African American tradition. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about the deserts and where some of that traditional music, I think, intersects with that. Anywhere you have suffering and you have music, you will have these forms bring themselves together. And to me, that's the meditation for this evening. And if you can stay for just one more second, I have a special treat for you, and that is my daughter's going to come up here, and she's not going to do any keening, but she's going to sing to you an Irish tune that she's learned. And to me, it carries that power within it too. And it's She Moves to the Fair, which again is another ancient Irish poem tune that is really about someone who loses a loved one. It's a ghost story because the ghost appears at the end, which is always fun as well. And Aoife's sung it before, and she's going to sing it for you guys to wrap us up tonight. And next week, we'll just wrap up with a whole lot of questions and time to talk, and I'll just bring some good songs in and play some more songs for you. If you can, you.
Ready?
I got it for you. Under my guitar.
Can you hold that? You hold that. Say a few words. You gonna stand? Can you stand on this side? You ready? She's very ready.
Thank you. I don't want to follow that. It's too good. I just want to be the backup guitar player for Eva. So thank you. Any questions? She's 8. She's 8. Yeah. He's got good voice. So I'm happy. One more chance to be a rock star. You know, not for a while. She's only 8. I'll be here at St. Thomas a good while. So don't worry about that. But what am I going to do when I retire? I'll just play guitar. Any last minute questions? A whole lot of music. Yeah.
Do the people in that little island, do they know that people in Kentucky are singing the same way?
Yeah, they do. They're quite aware of it. They've been brought over from the Isle of Lewis, and I think the Smithsonian brought them over, and they were able to sit together and sing together. And the saying goes, I don't know if any folks from Eastern Kentucky have gone to the Isle of Lewis, but they know that connection's there. And they also know that there's a similar lined sing, well, not necessarily similar, but a lined note singing variety that comes from the African American tradition too. When I was at Berea College, I got to sing with their black gospel choir head singer. We traded off. I did a verse from the old regular style. She did a verse from the more traditional African American style of lined hymnody, and then we both sang the hymn everybody knows together, a little bit of melody. So a high point in my life, but it was before the time of cell phones recording things. So I just have memories of it. But if only we'd had someone who could sing in Scottish Gaelic over there to sing a psalm with us. But it is interesting how in the Isle of Lewis, it comes from the tradition of singing psalms. But when it got to this country, it became the variety of hymn singing. Because like I said, I played you Guide Me, O Thou Great Jehovah, which comes out of our hymn. We've got that in our hymnal as well as Amazing Grace. And but they sing it in that same melody and style that's just haunting to hear. And then to hear it, if you've listened to this kind of music for long enough, and then you hear it from the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, it's like I get chill bumps every time I hear it because the melodies are the same. I don't know what words they're singing. I'm told it's Psalm 16, but the melody's there. And if you listen to any of their psalms, you can hear the same sound, the same group of people from two different sides of the ocean singing in a style that's probably was sung well before they were. Because we know that there were groups of Baptists who sang with that line note style as well in England and other places. So, yeah.
Are there any other places in the U.S. where there are connections like that? I think of Western North Carolina as being where Scottish people settled. Eastern Kentucky was Irish.
Well, they were both what we'd call Scotch-Irish. So they're all a mix of them there. But as far as line note, they might have done it in other parts of the country, but it just only really exists still trying to turn it off so it wouldn't hum. But it still only exists in central Appalachia and eastern Kentucky, those places I showed you on that map.
So that's kind of unique to the
It's unique now. It would have been done in other places, I'm sure, in the 19th century and before that, but it only still exists in that spot. Same way in Scotland, as far as we know, the only place where you can hear that variety of psalmody is on the Isle of Lewis. They're not doing that in Church of Scotland on the mainland or anywhere else, as far as we know. So it really is an amazingly unique musical place to hear those two styles. And to me, they're deep in that lonesome, high lonesome, what really is, if you want to understand blues, is feeling and emotion and those types of styles of singing. That's why I think it's the sacred blues, because that tone of voice is deep and rich in the longing that the people have as they travel through.
Are you familiar with the free holiness of this area?
Yeah.
I have some very good friends who are free holiness, and a lot of the traditions you were describing of the Baptists seem to be the same as their churches here, and the singing style is similar. I'm no expert.
Well, the holiness.
Funerals I've attended, the singing sound.
Oh yeah. Well, that mourning sound, which to me is Irish keening in the most traditional way, mourning. You hear it in all those places. The holiness traditions, though, were much less about holding on to some tradition and more about let's get the Word of God out there. So you go to holiness churches, they got drums and guitars Or not, they may not have that. But that's the differences in these traditions. There's no musical sound other than the human voice. And that human voice carries such
But
passion.
one of the things that hit me is their traditions. I mean, you look at the signs in front of Holiness Church.
Oh, yeah.
First and fourth Sundays.
Yeah.
New Hope Holiness, because Tuesday nights they're in Hazel Green, and
Yeah.
Wednesday nights they're somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah, that style would fit too with churches like that.
Anything else?
So you gonna play this on Sunday?
No, not on Sunday, not on Sunday, no. But maybe next Wednesday. So anyway, thank you all, and next Wednesday is the last session of this, so who knows what I'll play next week, so come on. We will talk a little bit about the desert. I want to share with you a few recordings of music from the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition that to me sounds very similar to this same thing, and it's in a completely different part of the world. So thank you, and hope to see you Sunday.